Alright, today we're talking about the Detroit Pistons, wrapping up our second round losers and slowly coming to the end of this series. The Detroit Pistons were coming off a year where they went 44-38 in 2024-25 and ended up losing in the first round of the playoffs after taking a massive jump during the season. In the offseason, they drafted Chaz Lanier with the 37th pick, they re-signed Paul Reed, they brought in Javonte Green, Karis LeVert, and Duncan Robinson all in free agency, ended up losing Tim Hardaway Jr., Lindy Waters III, Simone Fontecchio in the sign and trade for Duncan Robinson, Dennis Schroeder in a sign and trade, and would be without Malik Beasley due to an ongoing investigation. After taking a jump last season, Detroit was expected to improve as the team started to grow and mature, a surefire playoff team that had them ranked at number 11 in the preseason power rankings. The Pistons went 20-5 in their first 25 games and absolutely shocked the league with how well they were playing. There was a clear identity being developed for this team that revolved around a super tough defensive pressure. Outside of that, it had seemed as if their young players had really come into their own, especially Jalen Duren. He was showing a drastically improved defensive presence and a great knack for understanding where he needed to be on the offensive side of the ball for him to be successful. A jump that had a massive impact on the success of this team. Cade Cunningham also took a jump. Everyone knew the type of player he was and what to expect from him each game, but he took that to another level and was playing like an MVP candidate. Due to the leap from guys like Jalen Duren, he wasn't expected to generate all the offense for the team like in previous years, allowing him to work more off ball. His turnover numbers, although were still a bit high, had definitely improved and were coming down a little bit. Cade did end up missing a few games in this opening stretch, and this is when we all met Dennis Jenkins. He didn't start the first game he filled in, but that quickly changed as he exploded for 24 points and followed it up with an 18-point, 12-assist performance. This stretch of games moved him into the regular rotation for the Pistons for the remainder of the year, providing a spark plug off the bench at point guard and a reliable option to start when needed. Tobias Harris, although took a minor hit to his shot attempts, honestly looked really solid playing the 3-4 for this team and provided a great veteran presence for this young core. He was an awesome complementary piece for this franchise all season long. And as for the wings, Asar Thompson and Ron Holland, they're probably two of the biggest culture commanders to what this Pistons team is all about. Asar, although has very little impact on the offensive side, has turned into one of the best defenders in the league, completely shutting down opponents on a night-to-night basis. Ron Holland is in a similar boat, not as great on offense but is showing improvement when given the opportunity, contributes to that defensive identity very well at the wing. But honestly, I think a huge key to this team's success was the resurgence of Duncan Robinson. He provided them with spacing and shooting on the wing that was for the most part non-existent in previous years. Yes, he's a bit of a floater on the defensive side of the ball, but he gave the Pistons that assisted spacing that not only let the floor open up for Cade, but also for Duren down low. The Pistons rolled into the deadline and were sitting with a record of 37-13, comfortably at the top of the Eastern Conference. There was a ton of belief that they'd be looking to buy and make a move to bring in a solidified second scoring option to put beside Cade, and allow for the floor to open up some more with some shooting. Players like Trey Murphy and Lauri Markkanen were two names that kept popping up. And what did they do, you might ask? Well, they traded cash to the Timberwolves, Jaden Ivey to the Bulls, and in return got Kevin Huerter and a first-round pick swap. That is all. Shortly after the deadline, the Pistons had their moment of the year when they got into a brawl with the Charlotte Hornets. This led to suspensions to Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren, allowing for Paul Reed to come in and play large minutes at the 5. The second half of the year was not as smooth as the first half for the Pistons. We saw the team go on a 4-game losing streak down the stretch, and Cade Cunningham miss 11 games. Some of the team's weaknesses were exposed during this time, but they were still able to fight and win games behind Jalen Duren, Dennis Jenkins, and Tobias Harris leading the charge. The Pistons ended up finishing the year with a 16-22 record, good for first in the East, and drew the Orlando Magic in the first round of the playoffs. This series went anything but expected for the Pistons. The Magic came out swinging and were able to match their defensive identity with a defensive identity of their own, and expose the Pistons' clear lack of a second option, seeing as Jalen Duren completely forgot how to play basketball, taking a major decline in play and getting outplayed by Wendell Carter Jr. every single game. Because of this, the team relied heavily on Paul Reed and Isaiah Stewart at the 5, and it honestly was working. They were playing better than Jalen Duren was. They were actually able to provide something on the offensive side, and we know that both of them were going to work their ass off on defense every time they were on the floor. It honestly came down to Cade doing absolutely everything he could on offense and Asar being an absolute pest on defense that led them to coming back from being down 3-1 and winning the series in 7 games. In the next series, they faced the Cavaliers. This series was much closer, but Jalen Duren was still very much hurting the team more than he was helping. He did show a little bit of improvement, didn't look as bad as the first round, but definitely was not the same player that we were seeing in the regular season. It was still Cade Cunningham versus the world in this series, with the help of Tobias and Paul Reed. The Cavs really exposed the Pistons' lack of offensive production and won the series in 7 games. The Pistons season ultimately came to an end right there. In a year that was supposed to be for this team to grow and maybe take another playoff leap, they exceeded all expectations and went to the playoffs as one of the favorites to win the finals. The team heads into the offseason now with more clarity on what they need to do to be able to capitalize on this growth next season. Some key players I talked a little bit about but didn't really go into depth on, first one being Paul Reed. I don't think I can say enough good things about this guy. He comes into the game every time he is asked to and plays harder than every single person on the court. He won the Pistons quite a few games this year and was very big for them in the playoffs. I think everyone should approach the game the way Paul Reed does. Next guy is Isaiah Stewart. To sum it all up, he is the Detroit Pistons. The identity they've created is all thanks to what Isaiah Stewart does. He's an incredible rim protector and would die for anyone on this team. He stepped up huge in the absence of Jalen Duren during the season and will definitely be on this team for his whole career. If he's not, I would be shocked. The last guy is Marcus Sasser. He fell out of the lineup this year with the emergence of Dennis Jenkins. He's definitely a guy that can play and brings that Houston mentality to the lineup every time he's on the floor. I like Marcus Sasser. I have a soft spot for all Houston point guards. He's definitely going to get another opportunity elsewhere once his contract is up because I don't think the Pistons are going to bring him back. As we look ahead, the Pistons have the 21st pick in the draft after acquiring in a pick swap with the Timberwolves, and in the range, it is expected that the Pistons will target a floor general type of point guard to give some relief to Cade Cunningham as a ball handler. In this range, they're expected to target guys like Christian Anderson or Ibuka Okori, two guards that can definitely facilitate and create for themselves. This would allow for Cade to play off ball a little bit more and not be on the floor for 40 minutes a game. Two great prospects that look NBA ready and would be an immediate impact on the Pistons roster. Detroit's rebuild has officially arrived. After improving by 30 wins the year before, the Pistons took another leap, earning the number 1 seed in the East and posting one of the best seasons in franchise history. Patience paid off during the regular season. Rather than making major moves, Detroit relied on internal development and modest additions, with players like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, and Asar Thompson taking significant steps forward. This is a decision that many were surprised by at the time, and I will share my thoughts on it a little bit later. As I mentioned already earlier, the playoffs exposed the team's weaknesses. Despite a dominant regular season, Detroit blew a 2-0 series lead against the Cavaliers, and struggled with turnovers and late game execution during a second round exit. As they head into free agency, Jalen Duren is the biggest decision. Duren had a breakout all-star season and was one of the league's most productive interior scorers, but his playoff production dropped significantly, creating questions about how much Detroit should invest in him long term. He is eligible for a 5-year max contract valued at $287 million due to him being an all-star and making an all-NBA team. It has already been noted that two parties are not close in an agreement, and the Pistons are reluctant to give him the money after his playoff drop. I think he's going to be back in this team, but there's teams like the Bulls that have a ton of money that could just throw whatever at him. Because he's a restricted free agent, the Pistons might end up having to match a ton of money that they wouldn't have wanted to in the first place. So hopefully the two parties can come to an agreement before the offer sheets start rolling in. The Pistons have some financial flexibility. Detroit enters the offseason with cap flexibility, a trade exception, and the ability to create substantial cap space if they choose, giving the front office several paths to improve this roster. They're positioned well to bring back free agents like Tobias Harris if they choose, but he has been reported to be linked to teams like the Lakers, and they have Dennis Jenkins on a team option if they choose to opt in, but could bring him back on a multi-year deal as well. The last of the free agents include guys like Javonte Green, an absolute energy guy that can come in and give very impactful minutes every game and fits the team's culture. I would expect to see him back on the roster next season. Detroit definitely has the assets to make a major move and rewrite their wrongs that they had during the regular season. The Pistons control all their future first-round picks and have multiple tradable selections, putting them in position to pursue a significant trade if they choose to accelerate their timeline. They already been linked to guys like Trey Murphy, Kawhi Leonard, and even Lauri Markkanen if he becomes available. 3 players that would provide significant improvement to this roster after the team made a questionable decision to not go after a secondary scoring option at the deadline. Now into the extension candidates, first one being Asar Thompson. He is emerging as an elite defender. He established himself as one of the NBA's best perimeter defenders and was a Defensive Player of the Year finalist. Though his offensive development remains a work in progress, he is extension eligible until the last day of the offseason. But I assume the Pistons will try and get him knocked down as soon as they can to solidify the defensive star being on this roster for years to come. The Pistons must decide how much they want to invest into a player whose defensive impact is already elite, but whose offensive game is still developing. Other extension candidates include guys like Isaiah Stewart, who is definitely a no-brainer, Marcus Sasser, and Kevin Huerter, 2 guys that I think they're going to let walk once their contracts are done or look to trade him away this offseason. The roster absolutely still needs offensive help. Adding a reliable scorer, more shooting, and a stretch forward to complement Cunningham and Duren are among Detroit's biggest offseason priorities. It was seen as a huge hole that got exposed in both rounds of their playoff run after not addressing it at the deadline. If they are serious about capitalizing on their contention window, they have to bring in a solidified scoring option at the wing or at the 4. But to sum it all up, the Pistons completed their rise from a rebuilding team to a contender, but after a disappointing playoff exit, the offseason will center on Jalen Duren's contract, Asar Thompson's development, and whether Detroit uses its considerable flexibility to make a major roster upgrade.